Hi, I'm Tony Kent, and this is Tony Kent Writes and Chats, episode 6. It's the 6th of April, which means we've now done 6 of these in 7 days, a whole week of broadcasts, plus a couple of extra things. I can't really work out how I found enough to say to fill the time. I also can't work out how you keep watching, but thank you very much for doing so. So, when we last spoke, I promised that I would come back today, having done some writing, you would hope, and ready to talk about my writing process. I think I made some vague promises about word counts. We might get to word counts, but I think most importantly, let's talk about the writing process. And you'll remember I said I wanted to have a day of writing to then talk to you at the end of that day, so that the writing process is directly in my head still. Anyway, today, you remember, I hope, that our first day of writing was chapter 1, which I always like to have begin with a bang. I hope that's happened. We'll see when we get the book. I then spoke about chapters 2 and 3, which was the second day of writing. And with chapters 2 and 3, that was meeting old friends. That was meeting our recurring characters. And as I said, that kind of writes itself. I know how Dempsey and Devlin and Sarah Truman all think. I know exactly how they'd react to any circumstance. They're real people to me. I know them, and therefore they kind of write themselves. That was an easy day. Today was not an easy day. Today was the day where we really get the plot going. Well, really the building of the foundations to the plot. Chapter 1 is sort of wham, bam. Chapter 1 is read this book, here's a bit of spectacle. When you then get past your reintroduction to your characters, you're then in the world where you're doing the building work, you're building the foundations. This, I would hope, will be a roller coaster. I like to think of the books, as I've said before, as movies, but also another way of looking at it is roller coasters. And to keep with the metaphor, to keep the roller coaster on track, you've got to get the foundations right, you've got to get the structure right, you've got to get the steel right. And that's what the first few chapters of any book, once you've had your bang, once you've met your heroes again, the next few chapters is getting everything in place, sort of directing everything so that when it all comes together towards the end, it all makes sense. And that really is what today was about, and it's what the next while will be about. So I didn't write a huge amount today. I wrote 2,000 words. For me, that's not a huge amount. I know some people write 2,000 words a day, some people occasionally write less. I tend not to do that. And we'll talk about workout properly, I think, another time. But the process that I follow is what I wanted to talk about today, and it's the process that I followed today. Whether it's a good day or a bad day, I always follow the same process. So what do I do? Well, whenever I can start writing, which isn't necessarily in the morning because I have a full-time job and I have other things to do. But occasionally I can do it in the morning. I couldn't today. I started, I think, around midday. What I then did, once I started, was I reviewed and edited my second and third chapters, because that's how I always start the day. You will know that all writers, I'm sure, have different ways of doing it, and many writers don't edit anything until they have completed their first draft, and often they hand it in. I would love to be able to do that. I understand why people do that. I totally get it. But everybody's different. I don't actually have any ability to do that at all. I couldn't do that. And therefore, I begin every day with an editing process. I edit what I wrote the day before. And I find that by doing that, I give myself a rhythm. I get into a rhythm. And because it's a completed bit of work, and you can read through it and you get that rhythm of your writing going, I can then continue. And I think that the continuation, I'm then moving pretty quick. Much quicker than I would be if I was trying to write from scratch. Now, I think everyone's got their own way of how they start the day with writing. That just happens to be mine. I know, for example, Jane Casey, who writes the incredible Maeve Kerrigan books. I think we're going to come back to Jane in my next recommends, now that I mention it. She writes the incredible Maeve Kerrigan books. And I know what Jane does is she doesn't ever finish at the end of a chapter. So if she finishes a chapter, if it were me, I'd say, fantastic, the day's done, let's go and have some dinner and maybe a glass of whiskey. What Jane does is start the next chapter and get however far in so that she's never really starting with an empty page. And God, I wish I'd had that advice a long time ago, because that makes so much sense. But I've already got my process. It will be now too late for me to go back and change it and copy Jane wholesale. or copy any of the other things that I've heard from other people. So that's my process. I edit to begin with, it starts my rhythm, and then I write for the rest of the day. What I then do is I put it away for an hour, go back to it, have a tweak around, probably an hour or so, just tweaking it to make sure I'm happy, and then I give it to my wife. And Victoria has the distinct pleasure, and I hate to do this, I don't like that, but I really should when I call it a pleasure. She has the distinct pleasure every night of reading what I've written that day. That really is my first arbiter of whether we're on the right track or not. And when she reads it, she is very honest, and she'll say this is good or it's not. If she says it's not, and I'm thankful that's quite rare, then the next day will be spent with a fundamental rewrite. If she likes it, well, then we just go into our next day again. We have the edit, we have the writing, we have the wait, the tweak, and then the Victoria. And that's how my days of writing go. Now, I can't do them every day normally because I'm often here and there and everywhere at court. At the moment, I'm not. At the moment, if I go to court, I do so via phone or via Skype for business. And it's quite freeing. So I'm in a position now, I hope, which is why we're doing this, to be able to work every day, unusually enough. And hopefully we'll see how this process develops, see whether it can stay quite so strict and so solid as we move on, as we move forward. So yes, that's pretty much it for now. That's the process that I follow every day. That's the process that I followed today. I don't know why I'm looking at either of these books. It's the process I followed for all of these, but it's the process I'm still following for book 4. Now, one more thing. I should have maybe said this earlier or before, but there is a comment section on YouTube, and it would be quite interesting to see if we could make this a bit more interactive. So we've spoken now about process. We spoke yes about inspiration. We spoke about a number of things now. If you've got any comments, if you're a writer or you want to be a writer or you're a reader, if you've got any comments or any questions on any of these things, please do feel free to leave a message. Do feel free to leave a comment. And once we have enough of them on one subject, then we may get a whole show of answering them. Or it may well be I can begin the next broadcast by answering the previous day's questions. We'll see how it works. But it is possible to make this more interactive. So if you have anything to say, any kind of comments, any kind of questions, within reason, then do leave them and we'll see what we can achieve. And yes, I think that's it. And we'll come back tomorrow and who knows what we'll be discussing then. Thanks very much.